Not so long ago, mountain peaks, shrouded in mist, were a total mystery. People thought of them as hostile, eerie places, home to vultures and animals that were bad omens. But the good thing was that rivers began there. The great mountain ranges are impassable barriers where water vapor condenses and cools to form precipitation, such as rain or snow. Mountains are the source of this purified, new water. Their crystal-clear lakes are the birthplace of rivers. Most of these lakes are of glacial origin. Alpine lakes are relatively recent ecosystems, which were left behind after the last major glaciations a few thousand years ago. They tend not to be very deep, and their cold, clear waters, which are rich in oxygen, contain very little organic matter. Although it may not seem like it, this pure and very fresh water is not home to many life forms. A quick glance reveals just a few plants around the shore, and others floating in the water. Algae and plankton are rare, which makes for a rather poor food chain. The mountain environment is only accessible to creatures tough enough to withstand the cold, clear waters of alpine lakes. Not all alpine lakes are large. They are often formed of permanent pools of transparent waters called glacial mountain lakes, which have their own set of visitors. Although this climate is harsh, some amphibians choose the mountain water as a breeding place. Perhaps the relative lack of predators is in their favor. Some subspecies of the common salamander have become experts in living at this altitude. Their larvae stay in the icy waters of the glacial lakes and ponds until they lose their gills and develop outfits more suited to life on land. Once on land, they seek shelter in wet places. They only go out in search of food at dusk or during the night. Despite its apparent slowness, it's an excellent hunter. It doesn't only catch slow animals like slugs. Crickets and other insects can be caught out when it suddenly pounces on them. The common toad also climbs up to cold, wet mountain areas. At nightfall, it comes out of its hiding place. At this hour, its dinner is also emerging from the ground. Earthworms are the toad's main staple, and this is the best time to catch one. But not only animals hunt here. Around the edges of the lake at its outflows grows drosera, or sundew. It's a tiny plant whose leaves form a fatal trap. The tiny hairs on its leaves are tipped with droplets of sticky fluid. When an insect is attracted to this delicious nectar, it falls into a trap it cannot get out of. All of the sticky hairs on the leaf curl around the insect to paralyze and digest it. They are assured of their daily portion of nitrogen by breaking down the carapaces of the insects. Streams spring up from the lake, forming waterfalls as they descend, and join with other streams to form mountain rivers. Water from the source is very special. It is usually very cold, and the speed and force of the current is powerful. All these factors make life difficult here. The few creatures that inhabit these waters have to withstand harsh conditions. The river has currents, waterfalls, and rapids. It eats into the earth and drags it downstream. The creatures that live here have to fight against the currents and the materials it carries along with it. That's why they cling to the rocks or take refuge in their shells. Many of them have clawed feet so that they can anchor themselves in the substrate. Many Trichoptera and ephemeral larvae use their flat bodies to withstand the river's force. They can press themselves against the substrate or seek shelter in cracks or underneath stones. The creatures which best defend themselves from the currents have a secret weapon for clinging to the rocks of the riverbed. These are simulids larvae, flies which hatch underwater and blood feed on incoming hosts. They withstand the force of the water using a powerful suction pad with hooks. These larvae live in places where the current would wash away anyone else. Its jaws are shaped like a fan and filter the water for microscopic algae or graze the surface of the rocks to which they are anchored. Mountain rivers are born in the stillness of lakes, but they slip away and eventually form rough water currents. The powerful erosion of mountain water carves out underwater canyons with smooth, rounded surfaces where the water picks up immense speed. These curves are the result of abrasion produced by sand and rocks that the river itself carries at great speed. It is precisely the mountain water's purity and freshness that entices animals to come here and reproduce. Some fish make use of the calm, oxygen-rich pools at higher altitudes in order to spawn. Their eggs sink to the bottom, away from the current, and half hidden among the rocks and sand. The low temperatures help slow growth, so it takes them nearly 2 months to fully develop. But at long last, the young trout are born. Initially, its vitelline sac, full of food, is so heavy that it works like an anchor. The rate at which this food store is depleted depends on the temperature of the water. The colder it is, the more slowly it is consumed. The young will remain in the spawning ground without being able to move around. Once the reserves have been used up, they must fend for themselves, and they are well equipped to do so. Fish which inhabit mountain rivers have streamlined bodies, so there is as little resistance to the water as possible. They often remain immobile against the current in the hope that the water will bring them something to eat. In the mountains, water creates the purest, wildest, and coldest rivers, where only a privileged few may live. But let's return to the mist and the mountains, because the history of water is not always the same. In the Canary Islands, vegetation makes direct use of the water from the clouds borne along by the trade winds. These are warm, misty forests, like those which covered part of the planet during the Tertiary period 20 million years ago. These are fossil forests, which are closely linked to the passing of the clouds blown along by the winds coming off the sea. The branches of the laurel forest are covered in dripping lichen that capture vapor particles and turn them into drops of water. It is a kind of forest that works like a cloud extractor. As a result, the laurel forest absorbs more water from the clouds than from storms. Its environment is always wet, similar to a rainforest, which attracts a number of terrestrial mollusks. These damp forests are home to many unique species of snails and slugs. They are of considerable environmental importance because they help to form the forest floor, where they live off decomposing fallen leaves and dead wood. Once they have mated, they deposit their eggs in this warm, humid humus. They're hermaphrodites, so when they copulate, each fertilizes the other. Many unique animals live here, such as the strange bull's pigeon, which is native to these shady, mysterious woods. The pigeons are attracted by the ponds, which quickly quench their thirst. These pigeons only live in the dense forests of some of the Canary Islands, where they live off forest fruits. Thanks to the lush laurel forest and mild climate, they are able to breed year-round. In a sense, they are captives of the mist and clouds that blow in from the sea. These traveling clouds break up over the mountains of every continent to form the crystalline lakes that are the source of all the rivers on the planet.